Hey guys, what is up? This is Nick for PokerVIP.com. Today I'm making the third video in my Poker Snowie series. I'm gonna pretty much do the same as we did last two sessions. Play Snowie, get into some spots, and see how we do. Um, just a quick note on the first video I made. I had a comment on that I went through a few of the spots too quickly, so I will try and slow it down a little bit today. Again, I don't really want to go too much into the whole coaching stuff because I would not class myself as a coach. This is more just showing you how to use Snowie, how I'm using it. It's certainly beneficial for my game, and I'd definitely recommend it to anybody who wants to make the jump from maybe 10L, 20L, move up to 15L, 100 now. I think it's a really good tool to use for that jump. It's a good tool for anybody, I think, just to try some stuff out on. But specifically that group of players, and there's a lot of them who, been playing 10L for a long time, playing 20 or 25L for a long time, haven't really made that jump. And I think that this is a tool that can really help you. So I'm just demonstrating it. I'm showing you how I'm using it. And giving you suggestions. So I'll go through it a little bit slower. I might go into a bit more depth in some spots, but otherwise I'm going to keep it the same. I have made a few small alterations to my range. So if any of the more eagle-eyed of you out there spot a few subtle changes, I think in the call versus a free bet range, that's why. Also, I had a mention that in this kind of spot, not necessarily with Queen 7 off, but that this calling range was likely too tight against the min open, and I would totally agree with it. I mean, 28.7% here, and then the free bet we're free betting 9.2%. So I mean, what's that, like 38% total? Pretty, 20, about 38%. Total defense frequencies. It's a little bit low. We could go higher. I don't think it's a huge issue. I don't think we can begin to say, oh well, we can defend loads wider because we can exploit players massively out of position. But we could potentially go a little bit wider than the ranges we have here. This 10-8 is going to be a fold, and the ace-6 is going to be a fold. And yeah, so I'm hoping that I'm going to get into a few spots today where I can kind of discuss the differences between polarizing our range and having a more merged kind of range. Reading some interesting stuff recently on how different board textures help different people's ranges and how we should play them accordingly, which I think is a really important topic in general to look at. Pocket freeze here, I don't mind just calling. It's probably a slightly negative EV call, I suppose, but not necessarily against Snowie, but against people in general. We're going to make a lot of money when we make a set, I think. So I think we can make up the EV, and we get to test to see if that theory is correct. The queen pairing on the turn is like a little bit meh. We probably do have to bet this. It's not too likely either of these two have a queen, just because the queen pairs on the turn. If we are beginning to thinking about sort of like a balanced betting range, threes, fours, queen X, I think are all fine to bet. We can check call some pocket pairs, and then we can bet hands that block the most likely queen X combo. So king jack's a good one, king 10, jack 10, ace 10, ace jack. So typically the Broadway hands. Definitely if they have a club, obviously. We could even like check our ace jack. We could check some nut flush draws. But like I don't think betting them can be bad. I would prefer to bet them, I think, in real games. Given that this isn't typically like I said, we are going to bluff this a bit. Freeway makes it a little bit tough to do so. So those hands I was mentioning, like the king jack, king 10, we might not do it all the time with those. So this is a spot where, like, when we bet, we likely either have a pretty good hand or a hand that has good fold equity, just because it has decent blockers to his queen X. So therefore, we don't need to go that big. So I'm only going to go for a $4 bet. We get a call, which is nice. once he calls, or once Snowy calls, I think it's important to realise that we're only getting called here if he has a queen. If he has a flush draw, I don't think he's going to bluff raise us all that often. He might call with a pocket pair, but I'm really here just saying, well, on this particular on any river, my range is going to remain fairly strong. I'm not going to now turn, Jack X into a bluff. I'm probably going to just bet my value hands. This is, I guess, one of my stronger ones. The Jack's a little bit annoying because pocket Jacks, Queen Jack both get there. But this is still, a fair way up in my value range. If I'm betting all my Queen X on the turn, I might check some weaker ones, but I don't have too many. I guess actually, if it is my value betting range, maybe it's towards the middle. But either way, I'm happy to go for like a $9 bet and hopefully get looked up by a queen or a pocket pair. In game, I may go a little bit bigger just because I don't expect villain to turn up with much worse than trips there. Ace 9, I'm gonna call 100%. I'm just gonna have a double. There we go. Yeah, so this is the calling range, big blinds, calling versus a button. If we could have that range, thank you. Jack 9's gonna be a fold. So this is a board that villain should just be betting like pretty much the entire time. It's a very dry board. It's a type of board that when we miss, we probably should just give up. It's relatively interesting because his worst hands here should be able to auto profit by betting just because we have enough hands that fold. The only way we can stop that from happening is calling these kind of hands, or at least continuing with some sort of like ace high type hands. But I don't really love the idea of just check calling ace 9 here. I'd much rather float out of position with a hand like, again, the block top pair, so queen 10, queen jack, jack 10, those type of hands. Ace 9, it's not great, so even though we may be ahead slightly of villain's betting range, where we should be if he bets everything here, it's still like we're just going to lose EV by calling and then having to face the decision on the turn on the river. So it's probably a spot where Snowy wouldn't hate a call, but at the same time, I think that we're losing more money if we call. So I'm just going to fold it. Jack Queen, went check on the flop. The flop is relatively interesting because it's a little bit more dynamic than the other boards we've seen so far. This, in theory, makes it slightly better for our range, or not necessarily better in terms of we have all better hands than you, but it just means that the EV difference between our range and his range is likely to be smaller. So therefore, it's a lot harder for villain to begin, auto profiting when he just has, ace 5 of clubs. If he bets that, it possibly is just about profitable, but it's pretty close. Whereas on this king high board that I was talking about, it's just like he can bet any two and probably make a profit. Now we get to the turn. I'm kind of thinking here that our checking range is going to consist of a lot of 9x that we've got. If we have a look here, actually, we can have a look at our calling range here. So we can see that we have got 3 suited Jack X, and then ace Jack off as well. So Queen Jack suited is we actually got Jack 10, Jack 9 suited. So Jack Queen suited is kind of towards the bottom of our top pair hands. We do, however, have Jacks, 9s, 8s, 6s, 10, 8 suit. That's not actually a hand, though, is it? Queen 10 suited. So there's a lot better value hands we can have here. So I would be happier to check this. In terms of bluffs, obviously, like anything with a 10 in it's going to be particularly good. A hand like King Queen, Ace Queen is probably going to be quite good as well because they block not only the over pairs but also King Jack, Queen Jack, or Ace Jack, and they have equity as well. So I'm happy to check here. I'm not surprised to see Snowy bet, and I'm also not surprised to see him bet pot. It should be a position where he begins to polarize his range a little bit. It's not a great turn. Sorry, it's not a great river. We don't have too many King X in our range, which is a slightly annoying thing. And I think, although Snowy does have its faults, and it's definitely beatable, this is a situation which I think it can really help us in. It's putting us in quite a tough spot here. and simply because, I mean, he's bet pot when he knows that our range here has to be capped. We haven't check called a set on the turn. We haven't check called pocket queens on the turn, or that we might do. It's not all that, I think betting's probably higher EV. So he knows, or the computer knows, that our range here should be primarily Jack X, maybe pocket tens. Maybe 8-9 suited can check call sometimes, but even that is going to fall more likely into a bet. So, from a theory point of view, it's quite difficult to see. If we think about it, it's quite difficult for him to now bet this sizing with, say, King Queen that he's turned into a bluff on the turn, which I don't think he'll do. I think he'll do it on the flop. So I don't think he actually has too many King X in his range, certainly that would bet this size. A hand like Ace King wouldn't do it. A hand like Pocket Kings, I don't think would do it. I think that he would bet flop. So I don't actually think here that our hand is as bad as I think a lot of people begin to see. It's annoying when he turns up with a hand like Pocket Eights, which he can do, but I kind of see this sizing here as being a sort of sizing he will do with his bluffs as well. Whereas if he made it smaller, I'm like, well, okay, he can just have King Queen, King 10, which he's decided to bluff the turn with, and now he's trying to get a little bit of cheeky value from. So here I'm actually quite tempted to call, and wouldn't be surprised to see him turn up with Ace X blocking Ace Jack. I think I might call this. I don't think it's horrible, and also from a purely theory point of view, like, we only have maybe 8-9 suited checks on the turn. Other than that, we're kind of in an odd position when we check call the turn. So I'm going to call, partly for the sake of the video, partly because I think that he might, because we have the queen as well, blocking Queen 10, it might actually be fine. And yeah, let's see. And, it's always nice when it works on video, doesn't it? I don't look like a right idiot if he turns up with Pocket Kings there. But I think the call actually makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Snowie doesn't pull it up as a blunder. We block Queen 10, which is good. He's not value betting a king like that, so his range should be very polarized there. And because we block Queen 10, we block Pocket Jacks as well, which is quite nice. He's beginning to run out of hands. He bets his sets on the flop, so we kind of block the hand. So I'm quite happy with that call, and I think that's one thing that I'm not going to say because I can do that, I'm a great player or anything like that, because I'm not. But what I would say is that when we begin thinking that way, and Snowy can really help you think that way, because it's just put us in a tough spot. We've had to think quite a lot. We've worked it out. When you begin to think that way more and more and more, and you then take that to the tables, you begin to have, you improve your A game. You push your A game to a new level, and that new level is what will take a lot of players beyond the 10, 20 and L. I'm not saying that exact spot is going to work perfectly at 10 and L. You're going to find that you're going to have to stand back and say, okay, I'm playing 10 and L, and players aren't thinking on that level. But when you begin to move up and you begin to say, well, actually, he should be polarized here, and I block a lot of his polarized hands, you can begin to make those potentially hero calls, but yeah, so nice when it works out. This King Queen here, I've left this a long time. We opened in the cutoff and got called by the button. This kind of board here, let's have a think about it. So it's relatively dynamic, which again, it helps the caller. He does have hands like Queen 9 suited, Pocket 9s, Pocket 4s, and some pretty strong flush draws as well. In terms of what do I bet on the flop here, I think that's probably a good place to start at. We do have two pairs. We have Queen 9. We do have sets Queens, 9s, and 4s. We have some nutted flush draws, which we're going to bet and check some of the time. So we have got a decent value betting range here. I think that King Queen can fit into it, and I think if you're playing the micro stakes, I think it's absolutely fine to put in there. It really comes down to how you prefer to balance your range. If you're checking a lot here, then you can put this into your checking range. If you begin to bet a few more of your flush draws, then you have to go ahead and bet it. So it's probably quite close. I'm happy to go ahead and bet. Yeah, I wouldn't hate checking though. Turns a 4, which is quite good for us. It gets rid of him having pocket 4s. I keep saying him. If anyone has an issue with me saying him when it's a computer. Please let me know. I don't think anybody will do. So the 4 on the turn, it's probably a slightly better card for him than it is us, just because we're less likely to bet a 4. We may well bet a 4 because it blocks bottom set. I mean, if we have ace 4 of spades, it's probably okay to bet it. I might prefer check calling. But typically we won't have too many 4x in our range, so it's probably slightly better for him. That being said, we also just beat him a lot of the time when he has a worse queen or a flush draw. So I'm happy to go ahead and continue. About 2/3 pot bet. King on the river is potentially really nice, but it's a spot I think where a lot of people go perfect. I've now got top 2 pair and they bet and they don't think, well, actually, okay, Jack 10 got there, but it's more a case of if Snowy has a queen here, it's quite unlikely he calls it to a triple barrel, because he's sitting there and it's like, well, okay, he chops everything other than ace queen. And I say Snowy, obviously Snowy isn't going to think he's just going to pick the best play. I'm talking more in games. If you're up against someone fairly decent, you should begin thinking here, well, if I bet, he may call with a queen, block, to say I'm going to chop with all of his hands other than king queen, ace queen, pocket 4s, over pairs. But it's also a spot where if he has a flush draw, he can fold. And if we get raised, it's really quite ugly. So I think that Snowy may suggest that we bet, just because we're going to bet our bluffs on this river rather. If we have ace 10 of hearts, for example, and we've decided that we continue on the turn, it's a pretty good river for us. We block ace king if he decide to call that pre-flop, 10 king, but also 10 jack, and it makes all of his 10s and jacks fold. So I wouldn't hate to bet here. It's probably again quite close. I'm gonna check because I'm a little bit of a wuss in this kind of spot, I suppose. I'm not expecting to see, I'm expecting if he does bet for him to bet quite big and to feel really gross about it. But I don't really want to bet. Oh, but I guess betting. So this is again, you begin to think in a good way. I may not come up with the correct answer here. I'm thinking now, but if I bet and he raises, it's probably an easy but gross fold, or gross but easy fold's probably better. Whereas if we check and he bets pot, it's kind of a gross spot where we probably don't know what to do. So now I think about it more, I'm probably actually going to go for a little bit more value. I'm going to go for 21. I'm not going to go huge. Yeah, 20 is fine. I'm not going to go massive, and I'm just going to hope he calls down the queen. I'm expecting him to fold quite a lot here, though. And when he does this, like I said, it's kind of a gross but easy fold. Now I don't know. I don't see that this is a spot. This is why I would have preferred to check, because this situation comes up. But if I check and then he bets pot, it's gross as well. Thinking of hands he can do this with, obviously 10 jack. He could also do it when he has ace 10 of hearts, ace jack of hearts. Other than that, though, can also have pocket 4s, ace 4 suited. now I'm contemplating a call. We'll come back to that. Play a few hands over here, see if it makes it easier for us. And this has been great though, to get us in a few really tough decisions to work out. I'm kind of thinking, what would he do with pocket 9s and pocket 4s on the flop? He probably has a mixed strategy with them. Possibly raises them enough to make this just about a call. I guess from a theory point of view, if he knows that we're only betting queens, 9s and 4s, then king, queen and bluffs on the river, I don't know if then that's correct, if he has 10 jack. I'm not sure if he can do this with 10 jack and be profitable. In game, I think I would just fold this a lot, if not always. Against Snowy, though, flush draw misses. I guess ace 10, ace jack. They're the hands I'm kind of thinking. Ace 10 and ace jack would do this. Oh, well, I'm going to call. I'm going to talk myself into a call. I think, this is a spot. In game I would fold. I'm going to call to see what he has for the video. It's another great thing with Snow. We can kind of call to see what he has without losing any money. And if we win, cool. It's probably quite close. And okay, so he calls the flop with 9s. So that's fine. I think that in game, against a lot of players, they raise the flop with pocket nines. So it might not be a spot we get into, and if we do, I'm happy just to fold. I think in my Snowy challenge, my where I'm tracking my results, I'm not sure whether I want to include that. Probably, yeah, I will. Who cares? Jack 5 suit's gonna be a fold. King Queen is gonna be an open. 3-5 off's a fold. Okay, so we get 3-bet here, in mid position 4 betting. Suggesting, well, range I've come up with here: kings, aces, ace king off, ace king suited for double stack, king queen, king jack or king queen off as bluffs, king jack off I think is we bluff it when we're in position, that's why it's got that green mark, and ace 5 and ace 4 suited. I might prefer to just 4-bet always with king jack off here and drop the ace 5 and ace 4 suited. But there you go. And when he clicks it, this is again where it gets into the doesn't happen in real life kind of scenario. I don't think many people just click it back here. But yeah, we'll fold. If I was to have a bluff shoving range, this possibly would be the hand to do it with. Although, I say that, kings, aces, obviously, ace king off is probably, good enough to be a bluff, considered as a bluff shove. When we get called, we're probably not loving life, but it does block aces and kings. So we can fold and not feel too bad about it. Four nine. Let's think about it. So limp pot. Again, we're not going to get many competent players who limp until you begin reaching, mid stakes, and then it becomes a strategy that people like to play. I don't mind just leading here, even though we've got second pair. It's kind of nice just to get him to fold anything with equity, but I guess he calls a lot of hands which have equity, so checking back wouldn't be horrible. Excuse me. What are we doing against mid position? So against mid position, we're calling sort of like 6-7, 8-7 suited. 5-6 suited is pretty close to the edge of our range here. I guess because we've got another player in, it makes it just about okay. We flop a gut shot. That was a bit of an odd accent. We flop a gut shot. Backdoor flush draw. And it's also the sort of spot where, to be honest, we probably just need to bet it. The EV of checking this probably isn't that high. It's going to be slightly better than 0 because we're going to make our hand obviously some of the time. But I would imagine that betting has a slightly higher EV. What hands would I bet here? Anything with a 10, I'd probably bet to then pot control sometimes on the turn. If I have jacks here, which I possibly do, and my sets. So certainly 2s and 4s anyway, maybe not always 10s. So for that reason, I'm not going to go too big again, make it 4.5. That worked out perfectly. 7-4 suited. This is a spot, because the board is quite dynamic. There's a lot of draws out there. It's not great for us. I'd rather just sort of like check here. The EV of checking is probably going to be slightly higher. We can't, this is not a board which we can begin auto profiting with our bluffs, with the bottom of our range. And, I don't think we can make a profit by betting this. We can, however, make a profit when we turn 2 pair. Relatively interesting spot now as to whether we want to raise or not. And I'm probably going to say yes, because 5-6 we may want to bet. Certainly if it has diamonds or if it's a flush or hearts. So we end up being in a situation where we don't... our raising range... This is like the bottom of our raising range, but he's made it so small. So I am going to raise because he's made it so small. And I think that, if he folds a flush draw, then, oh well. Probably isn't a huge issue either way. Play a few more hands and then I'll quickly get up the review to see if we made any blunders. I'm very interested to see, first, if that call with King Queen is classed as a blunder, and secondly, if the hero call was. The Queen Jack here, this is obviously a much better spot for us than it is for the big blinds. We have a lot more and better ace-x in our range. We have all the sets. He can't have aces. Sometimes he may 3-bet 10s as well. So it's a decent enough board for us, and we just have a gut shot. We block ace queen, ace jack, pocket queens, 3-bet, pocket jacks. So it's a good spot for us to go ahead and bet. We don't have to make it huge. Backdoor and the gut shot. It's the sort of spot where a lot of people go, oh well, we have a gut shot, backdoor flush draw. It's a bet. Whereas it's actually a case of, well, we block ace jack and ace queen, pocket jacks, 10 queen, 10 jack. We have a lot of folds. So that's more of a reason why compared to, well, we have equity, so we'll bet. The ace-3 here, we get a donk, and I'm just going to let this one go. I don't love it, but it's a board which it's better for him than it is for us. So I'd rather continue when we just have a strong hand. But I'm going to close these. Yes, we do want to quit. And I'm quickly going to pause the video and get up the Snowie's analysis. Okay, and so we can see that Snowie has not agreed with our plays here at all. It'll be interesting to see if the two blunders are the two blunders that we looked at in detail. Let's have a look. I would just say, I'll reiterate this, as I have done, I think, in both of the videos beforehand, but I'll say it again. Anyway, this error rate, I mean, like, when you're playing against Snowie, and if you're between 0 and 4, you're not making money in real life, I don't think. Well, I say that. You probably are, but I don't think it's the most profitable way to play. I think that if you're aiming to play extraterrestrial in-game, you know, in real life, I don't think you're going to be making a ton of money. Or you probably are going to be making money, but you're probably not going to be making as much as you could. And also, the way Snowie makes a lot of plays, it's assuming that, you know, he's playing against Snowie. And when we're playing, if we're playing against someone who has 100% value bets on the river, and we're calling with our balance range, when we don't beat any of his value bets, I would much prefer having a massive error rate and knowing I'm not losing any money there. But yeah, let's have a look at the two blunders. I'm fully imagining it's going to be the king queen and the hero call, and I'm gonna. Okay, so there's the first one. So king queen says we should fold, and it's quite a bad negative EV. Let's see what he's calling with. So he's only ever calling with pocket kings and sometimes pocket aces, if that's correct. Yeah, okay. So that's fine. We did think that you know, it was probably a fold, and I would prefer a fold. I think I would fold as well if it wasn't for the video. I'm interested to see if Snowie always bets king queen here, and he does. So we can see that, you know, by checking we would have missed out against Snowie's ranges some EV. Even though, interestingly, our my gut was suggesting to check. The EV of my sizing is slightly smaller than the EV of half pot, which is relatively interesting. Okay, let's go and find the next one. Is it going to be the call? Okay, sorry. No, I forget that Snowie doesn't have this in his 4-betting range. I'm interested to see what Snowie's 4-bet range here is. Aces, kings, queens, jacks, 10s, 9s. Ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack. Okay, so he just... He effectively takes, I think I've already said this, I don't need to say it again, takes the top part of his range and, you know, does it that way. Fair enough. But yeah, okay. So thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you learned something. I hope that, you know, you'll be able to download, buy, whatever you want to do with Snowie and use it effectively. I'll say it again, I'm not a coach. I would say that I'm just showing you how to use Snowie, because I think that Snowie is a very powerful tool if you use it in the correct way, or in a correct way, because there's probably a lot of correct ways of doing it. I think that the way that I'm using it is very beneficial. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for watching.